The year was 2247, and Commander Jake Morrison sat in his chair staring at screens that showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. The Neptune monitoring station floated in the cold darkness far from Earth, and most days nothing interesting happened at all. Jake had spent 3 years watching these same screens and listening to the same quiet hum of the equipment around him. He was a tall man with gray starting to show in his dark hair and lines around his eyes from squinting at displays for too long. Most people thought his job was boring, but Jake liked the peace of it. He had served in Earth's colonial fleet before this and had seen enough excitement to last a lifetime. Now he just wanted quiet shifts and simple reports to send back home. That morning started like every other morning. Jake drank his coffee and checked the overnight readings while his team slowly filtered into the command center. Dr. Lily Patterson arrived first, as she always did. She was young and brilliant and completely obsessed with the idea that alien life existed somewhere out there. Lily had dark eyes that lit up whenever she talked about xenolinguistics and a habit of pushing her black hair behind her ears when she was thinking hard about something. She sat down at her station and immediately began running through the communication logs, even though Jake had already checked them twice. The alarm came at exactly 7:32 in the morning. A sharp beeping sound that made everyone in the command center freeze and look up at the same time. Jake felt his heart jump because that particular alarm meant only one thing. The system had detected an artificial signal from deep space. Not random cosmic noise or natural phenomena, but something deliberately transmitted by intelligent beings. Lily was already moving before Jake could say anything. Her fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up data streams and analysis programs. The other station crew gathered around her screen, watching numbers and waveforms scroll past faster than most of them could follow. Jake stood behind Lily and put his hand on the back of her chair to steady himself. In 3 years of monitoring, they had never detected anything like this. Nothing even close. The signal was strong and getting stronger as their systems locked onto it and began recording. Lily worked in silence for almost 10 minutes before she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but Jake could hear the excitement underneath it. She said the signal was definitely artificial and definitely not human. It was using a mathematical structure that no Earth program had ever created. The encryption was complex but followed logical patterns that suggested whoever sent it wanted it to be decoded eventually. The signal was also repeating every 47 seconds, which usually meant a distress call or emergency broadcast. Jake immediately called Captain Ryan Hughes on the secure line. Ryan commanded the Earth Defense Force cruiser Vanguard, which was currently stationed near Neptune on patrol duty. Ryan was older than Jake by about 5 years, with a square jaw and gray eyes that never seemed to blink during a crisis. He had a reputation for staying calm when everyone around him was panicking. When Jake explained what they had found, Ryan said he would bring his ship closer to the station and wait for more information. Lily worked for 6 hours straight without taking a break. Jake brought her food that she ignored and coffee that she drank without looking away from her screens. The rest of the team helped where they could, but mostly they just watched and waited. Lily had programs running that compared the alien signal to every mathematical language and symbolic system humanity had ever discovered or invented. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to understand the structure of the message. The breakthrough came when Lily realized the signal was using prime numbers as a framework. Once she understood that, the rest began to fall into place. By early afternoon, she had a partial translation that made Jake's blood run cold. The message was definitely a distress call. It came from a species that called themselves the Viren Collective. They were under attack by something called the Korthax Dominion. They were calling for help from their allies, the Zephian fleet, but something had gone wrong with their transmission. The coordinates were off. The signal had missed its intended target by a huge margin and reached Earth instead. Jake stood at the observation window looking out at the stars while Lily continued working. He thought about what this meant. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had proof that they were not. But that proof came wrapped in a desperate call for help from beings who were dying while waiting for rescue that would never come. At least not from the people they had been trying to reach. Emma Rodriguez arrived from the Vanguard on a shuttle just before sunset. She was the chief engineer on Ryan's ship, and she had a gift for understanding technology even when it was completely unfamiliar. Emma was short and strong, with calloused hands and oil stains on her uniform that she never quite managed to wash out completely. She looked at Lily's work and immediately began asking technical questions about the signal's origin point and transmission method. By evening, Lily had extracted coordinates from the message. The battle was happening right now about 40 light-years from Earth. The Varans were fighting and dying while their distress call bounced through space, reaching no one who could help them. Lily also found fragments of other information in the signal. The Korthax Dominion had destroyed 17 civilizations in the past decade. The Varans expected to be number 18. They had 3 colony worlds and all of them were under attack. Their military fleet was small and outmatched. They would not last long. Jake contacted Earth Command directly. He spoke with Admiral Helen Clark, who listened to his report in silence. When he finished, she asked him to send all the data immediately and stand by for orders. Jake could hear other voices in the background on her end. This decision was going up the chain very quickly. Ryan came aboard the station that night. He found Jake in the command center staring at a star map that showed the location of the Varan system. Ryan stood next to him and looked at the same map. Neither man spoke for a long time. Finally, Ryan said that his ship was ready to jump if Earth Command gave the order. His crew was prepared and his weapons were loaded. But he also said that going to help the Varans meant making first contact with aliens during a war. It meant possibly starting a fight with the Korthax Dominion before humanity even knew what they were facing. Jake said he understood all of that, but he also understood that 17 civilizations had already died. The Varans were calling for help, and by pure chance or fate or accident their call had reached Earth. Humanity had a choice. They could ignore the message and pretend they never heard it. Or they could answer. The orders came through at midnight. Earth Command was sending the Vanguard to investigate. Lily would go with them to handle communications. Emma would be ready to analyze any alien technology they encountered. Ryan would command the mission, but they were not authorized to engage in combat without direct approval. They were supposed to observe and report back. Nothing more. Jake watched from the observation deck as the Vanguard powered up its engines. The ship was sleek and dangerous looking, with weapons ports along its hull and shield emitters glowing blue in the darkness. Lily stood at one of the windows on the ship and raised her hand in a small wave. Jake waved back, knowing she was terrified and excited at the same time. The Vanguard jumped to faster than light speed and disappeared. The space where it had been was suddenly empty. Jake went back to his screens and his quiet station. But everything felt different now. Humanity was no longer alone. They were about to meet their neighbors. And those neighbors were at war. The Vanguard dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Varan system, and what Ryan saw through the forward view screen made his stomach turn. Debris floated everywhere in thick clouds that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Broken pieces of ships tumbled slowly through space alongside shattered sections of what looked like orbital stations. Some of the wreckage was still burning with fires that would eventually consume all the oxygen, trapped inside the twisted metal, and then die out in the vacuum. Ryan had seen combat before, but never destruction on this scale. Lily stood next to him on the bridge with her hand pressed against her mouth. She was counting the pieces, trying to estimate how many ships had been destroyed here. Emma worked at the engineering station running scans of the debris field, looking for any technology they could analyze. The rest of the crew moved quietly through their duties with the kind of focused silence that came when everyone was trying not to think too hard about what they were seeing. The tactical officer called out contact reports. 3 massive ships were in orbit around the 3rd planet in the system. The computer was analyzing their size and configuration, but even without the numbers, Ryan could see they were huge. Each one was at least twice the size of the Vanguard and covered in weapon ports that glowed with a dull red light. Between those 3 giants and the planet below, a small cluster of smaller ships darted and weaved, trying to avoid the incoming fire. Ryan counted 15 of them. They were fighting, but it looked more like dying slowly. Lily activated the communication systems and began broadcasting on every frequency the Varan distress call had used. She sent mathematical sequences and prime number patterns. She transmitted images showing peaceful intent and requests for dialogue. For almost 3 minutes, nothing came back except static. Then a voice crackled through the speakers using sounds that no human throat could make. The computer tried to translate but failed. Lily adjusted her programs and tried again. The second attempt worked better. The voice came through choppy and strange but understandable. It said, "Identify yourself." It said, "State your allegiance." It said respond immediately or be destroyed as an enemy combatant. Lily looked at Ryan and he nodded. She transmitted back using the same translation matrix. She said they were from Earth responding to a distress call. She said they were not part of this conflict. She said they wanted to help. The response came faster this time. The voice identified itself as Ambassador Krell Vosen of the Varen Collective Defense Fleet. There was confusion in the transmission. Krell said he had never heard of Earth. He said the distress call was meant for the Zephian fleet. He said humans should leave immediately because this system was lost and there was no point in dying here with the Varens. Ryan leaned forward in his chair and told Lily to keep the channel open. He introduced himself and explained that the Varen distress call had reached Earth by accident. He said that humanity had never made contact with alien species before today. He said that his orders were to observe and report back. Then he paused and looked at the tactical display showing those 15 small ships still fighting against impossible odds. He asked Krell how long the Varen fleet could hold out. The answer came back quiet and defeated. Krell said maybe 2 hours if they were lucky. The Korthax Dominion ships had already destroyed the orbital defenses and bombed 2 colony worlds into rubble. This was the last world and the last fleet. The Zephian allies were 3 weeks away. The Korthax commander had offered terms of surrender, but those terms meant slavery for every surviving Varen. Krell said his people would rather die free than live as slaves. Emma called out from the engineering station. She had been analyzing the Korthax ships during the conversation. The aliens used energy shields that cycled in predictable patterns. Their weapons were powerful plasma cannons that could tear through most armor, but they had slow recharge rates. The Korthax ships moved in rigid formations like they were following specific tactical doctrines. Emma said they fought like a species that had never lost before. They were confident and maybe overconfident. Ryan stood up and walked to the view screen. He watched one of the Varen ships take a direct hit and break apart. 14 ships left now. He thought about his orders to observe only. He thought about the fact that engaging in combat here would mean starting a war between humanity and the Korthax Dominion. He thought about going home and reporting that he had watched an entire civilization die while he did nothing. The tactical officer spoke up. She was young and this was her first deep space assignment. She said the Korthax ships were repositioning to begin planetary bombardment. She said they were targeting population centers. She said millions of Varens were about to die. Her voice was steady, but Ryan could hear the tension underneath it. Ryan made his decision. He told his crew to bring the ship to battle stations. He told Emma to route all available power to shields and weapons. He told the pilot to position them between the Korthax fleet and the planet. Lily started to protest, but Ryan held up his hand. He said that humanity had spent thousands of years wondering if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they were not alone. Now they knew that the universe had bullies and victims just like Earth had always had. He said that maybe humanity was not ready for a galactic war, but they were damn sure not going to sit here and watch genocide happen in front of them. The Vanguard dropped its stealth systems and accelerated toward the Korthax formation. Alarms started going off immediately as the 3 massive enemy ships detected the human vessel and began targeting protocols. Lily transmitted on all frequencies that they were taking defensive positions to protect Varen civilians. The Korthax response came back in a different voice. This one was deeper and carried more authority. The computer translated it as War Commander Thrax of the Korthax Dominion. Thrax demanded that the unknown vessel identify itself and stand down immediately. He said that this system had been claimed by the Korthax Dominion under the ancient right of conquest. He said interference would be considered an act of war. He said the unknown vessel had 30 seconds to retreat or be destroyed. Ryan opened a channel directly to Thrax. He spoke slowly and clearly so the translation systems could keep up. He said his name and his ship and his species. He said that humanity had received a distress call from the Varen Collective. He said that humanity had come to answer that call. He said that the Korthax Dominion could accept human presence here, or they could try to remove it by force. Either way, the Vanguard was not leaving. There was a long pause. Ryan imagined Thrax trying to process this new situation. An unknown species with an unknown ship appearing in the middle of a battle and refusing to back down. Finally, Thrax responded. His voice carried amusement now. He said that humanity was either very brave or very stupid. He said that the Korthax Dominion had conquered 17 civilizations. He said humanity would learn what it meant to defy the Dominion. The 3 Korthax dreadnoughts turned their weapons toward the Vanguard. Ryan could see the plasma cannons charging on his tactical display, bright red indicators showing where the enemy fire would come from. His crew was ready. His ship was ready. He was not sure if humanity was ready, but they were about to find out. Emma counted down the seconds until the Korthax fired. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The space around the Vanguard lit up with incoming plasma, bolts that burned bright enough to hurt the eyes. Ryan gripped the arms of his command chair and hoped that human engineering was as good as they thought it was. The shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impact. The ship shook hard enough to rattle loose equipment, but the shields held. Ryan smiled. He looked at his crew and said, "Welcome to first contact." Then he ordered them to return fire. The Vanguard's weapons fired, and Ryan watched the railgun rounds streak toward the nearest Korthax dreadnought. The kinetic projectiles moved so fast they were almost invisible, but the targeting computer tracked them perfectly. They slammed into the Korthax shields and created ripples of energy that spread across the barrier like waves on water. The shields held, but the Korthax ship rocked backward from the impact. Ryan could almost feel the surprise from the enemy commander. Emma was already shouting new information from her station. She said the Korthax shield cycled every 12 seconds. For just half a second during the cycle, the shields dropped to 20% strength while they recharged. That was the window they needed. She was feeding the timing data to the weapons officer, who nodded and adjusted his firing patterns. The next volley of railgun rounds hit during the weak point and punched through. 2 rounds struck the hull of the dreadnought and tore holes in the armor plating. It was not enough to cripple the ship, but it proved the Korthax could be hurt. The 3 Korthax dreadnoughts changed formation. They had been focused on the Viren ships, but now they turned their full attention to the Vanguard. War Commander Thrax was done playing games. The plasma cannons fired in sequence, creating a wall of superheated energy that came at the human ship from 3 directions at once. Ryan ordered evasive maneuvers, and the pilot threw the Vanguard into a tight spiral that made everyone on the bridge grab onto something solid. The shields flared again and again as plasma bolts grazed the ship. One hit scored a direct impact, and the shield strength dropped by 15% in an instant. Lily was still maintaining communication with Ambassador Krell. The Viren commander was watching the battle in disbelief. He transmitted that he had never seen any species fight the Korthax this way. Most civilizations use formation tactics and honor codes. They fought in predictable patterns. The Vanguard was fighting like a cornered animal. It dodged and weaved. It used the debris field for cover. It fired from unexpected angles. Krell said his people were studied warriors and traders, but they had never developed combat tactics like this. Ryan explained through Lily that humanity had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Humans fought each other before they ever reached space. They learned how to survive against stronger enemies by being unpredictable and relentless. They learned that honor was nice, but winning was better. He told Krell to watch and learn, because humanity was about to teach the Korthax what it meant to fight an Earthship. The Vanguard dove into the thickest part of the debris field. The pilot navigated through spinning chunks of destroyed stations and broken ship hulls. The Korthax dreadnoughts were too large to follow safely. They had to go around the debris, which gave the Vanguard precious seconds. Emma used those seconds to launch a spread of mines disguised as debris. The weapons officer scattered them throughout the field using random placement patterns. Then they waited. One of the Korthax ships pushed into the debris field anyway. Thrax was getting angry, and anger made commanders take risks. The dreadnought's shields were up at full strength, but shields did not stop slow-moving objects. The mines drifted closer, looking like nothing more than broken metal. When the Korthax ship passed between 3 of them, they all detonated at once. The explosion was not enough to destroy the dreadnought, but it damaged the shield emitters on the port side. The ship's shields flickered and dropped to half strength. The Viren fleet saw the opening and attacked. 14 ships concentrated their fire on the damaged dreadnought. Their weapons were weaker than human railguns, but 14 ships firing together made up for that. The Korthax shields collapsed completely, and the Viren weapons tore into the exposed hull. Atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. The dreadnought listed to one side and began falling toward the planet below. War Commander Thrax roared something over the open channel. The translation came through as a mix of anger and grudging respect. He said that humanity fought without honor but with great skill. He said the Korthax had underestimated the unknown species. He said that mistake would not happen again. The two remaining dreadnoughts pulled back into a defensive formation and prepared for a coordinated assault. Ryan knew this was the critical moment. His ship was holding its own, but barely. The shields were down to 60%. They had used half their railgun ammunition. Life support was functioning, but several secondary systems were offline. Emma reported that the main engines were running hot and would need to be shut down for cooling soon, or they would risk a catastrophic failure. They had bought time, but time was running out. Jake Morrison's voice suddenly came through from Neptune Station. He had been monitoring the battle through the Vanguard's data transmissions. He said that Earth Command had received Ryan's combat reports. Fleet Admiral Helen Clark was mobilizing every available ship. 10 vessels, including the heavy carrier Liberty, were being prepared for immediate deployment. But they were days away, even at maximum faster than light speed. Jake said Earth believed in what Ryan was doing. He said humanity was coming. Ryan just needed to survive until they arrived. The Viren ambassador Krell transmitted a new message. He said his people owed humanity a debt that could never be repaid. He said the Varens had accepted their extinction, but humanity had given them hope. He asked what his fleet could do to help. Ryan looked at the tactical display showing the two Korthax dreadnoughts preparing their next attack. He made a decision that was either brilliant or insane. Ryan told Krell to have his ships form up behind the Vanguard. He said they were going to charge directly at the Korthax formation. The Varens would focus all their fire on one dreadnought, while the Vanguard targeted the other. It was a desperate gamble that meant closing to point-blank range, where the Korthax plasma cannons would be devastating. But it also meant the Korthax shields would be overwhelmed by incoming fire from multiple angles. Someone was going to die in the next few minutes. Ryan was betting it would be the Korthax. Lily translated the plan and waited for Krell's response. There was a long pause. Then Krell replied that his people had already accepted death today. At least this way they would die fighting alongside warriors who understood courage. The Varen fleet moved into formation behind the human ship. 14 small vessels and 1 Earth cruiser against 2 Korthax dreadnoughts. The odds were still terrible, but they were better than they had been an hour ago. War Commander Thrax saw the formation change and understood what Ryan was planning. He transmitted one last message. He said that humanity had earned his respect. He said it was unfortunate they would all die here today. He said the Korthax Dominion would remember the name of Captain Ryan Hughes as the human who dared to challenge them. Then he gave the order to fire everything. The space between the two forces lit up like a small sun. Plasma bolts and railgun rounds and Viren energy beams crossed paths in a deadly light show. The Vanguard's shields took hit after hit and the strength percentage dropped fast. 50%, 40%, 30%. Emma screamed that the shields were failing. The weapons officer kept firing until the barrels were glowing red hot. The pilot pushed the engines past their safety limits and the whole ship vibrated from the strain. Ryan watched his tactical display as the distance closed. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 200 meters. At this range, there was nowhere to hide and no time to dodge. He saw one of the Varen ships explode as a plasma bolt cut it in half. He saw another veer off trailing fire, but he also saw his railgun rounds punching through the Korthax shields. He saw Varen weapons burning holes in enemy armor. He saw the Korthax dreadnought his ship was targeting begin to break apart as its reactor went critical. The explosion when it came was massive. It threw the Vanguard backward and sent half the crew tumbling from their stations. Emergency lights kicked on as the main power failed. Emma worked frantically to reroute systems and keep the ship functional. Ryan pulled himself back into his command chair and checked the tactical display through cracked screen. One Korthax dreadnought was gone. The other was heavily damaged and retreating. Thrax was still alive, but his ship was crippled. Then new contacts appeared on sensors. 7 sleek ships dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the system. Lily identified them from the database she had built from the Viren transmissions. The Zephian fleet had arrived 3 weeks early. Somehow they had gotten the message. Ambassador Krell was shouting something in his own language that the translator could not keep up with, but it sounded like joy. The Zephian warships moved through space with a grace that made even the damaged Vanguard look clumsy by comparison. They were smaller than the Korthax dreadnoughts, but faster and more elegant, with swept-back wings that seemed unnecessary in space but somehow looked right. Each ship gleamed silver in the light of the Viren sun, and their weapons glowed with a blue energy that was different from anything Ryan had seen before. The lead ship transmitted a signal that Lily's computer translated immediately. The voice was sharp and precise, like someone used to giving orders and being obeyed without question. Fleet Commander Syra Keen identified herself and demanded to know what was happening in the Varen system. She said the Zephians had detected unusual energy signatures from 40 light-years away, and had pushed their engines beyond safe limits to arrive early. She said she was prepared to defend the Varen Collective against Korthak's aggression. Then she paused and added that she was also very interested in knowing who the unknown vessel was and why they were fighting the Korthaks. Alongside the Varens, Ryan tried to stand, but his legs were shaky from the adrenaline wearing off. He sat back down and told Lily to open a channel. He explained who he was and where he came from. He said that Earth had received the Varen distress call by accident. He said that humanity had never met another intelligent species before today. He said that when they arrived and saw the Korthaks destroying the Varen worlds, he had made the decision to intervene. His voice was tired, and he knew he probably sounded half crazy, but he told the truth as clearly as he could. Syra Keen was silent for a long moment. Then she said that humanity was either the bravest species she had ever encountered, or the most foolish. She said that the Korthak's dominion did not forgive interference. She said that by fighting here today, Ryan had made an enemy of the most powerful military force in this region of space. She asked if he understood what he had done. Ryan looked around his bridge at his crew. Emma was covered in soot from an electrical fire she had put out with her bare hands. The weapons officer had a cut across his forehead that was still bleeding. The pilot was slumped in her chair, exhausted from the intense maneuvers. Lily was pale and shaking, but still working her communication systems. They all looked at him, waiting for his answer. Ryan told Syra that he understood perfectly. He said humanity had a long history of making powerful enemies. He said they were still here anyway. War Commander Thrax's damaged dreadnought was trying to retreat toward the edge of the system. His shields were down and his engines were failing. Syra saw the opportunity and took it. She transmitted new orders and her 7 ships moved into an attack formation. Ryan saw what she was planning and fed his tactical data to her ship. The Zephians had speed and precision. The humans had information about Korthak's shield cycles and weapon patterns. Together they executed a pincer movement that cut off Thrax's escape route. The Korthak's commander knew he was trapped. He transmitted one final message that came through filled with static from his damaged systems. He said that the Korthak's dominion would avenge this defeat. He said that humanity had been marked for destruction. He said that the Emperor himself would hear about the species that dared to interfere in Korthak's conquest. Then his ship jumped to faster than light speed with what little power remained. He escaped, but barely. His invasion force was destroyed and his reputation was ruined. The battle was over. The Varen planet below was saved, though scarred by the bombardment it had endured. Ambassador Krell transmitted thanks to both the humans and the Zephians. His voice was thick with emotion as he listed the casualties. 8 of his 14 ships had been destroyed. Millions of Varens were dead on the colony worlds, but his species would survive. The Varen Collective would endure because 2 unknown species had come to their aid. Syra Keen requested permission to send medical teams to the Vanguard. Emma reported that they had hull breaches on 3 decks and the main reactor was operating at barely 60%. They needed help and Ryan was not too proud to accept it. Zephian shuttles docked with the human ship within an hour. The Zephians themselves were tall and thin with feathers instead of hair and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. They moved with quick, efficient movements and their medical technology was far ahead of anything Earth had developed. They sealed the hull breaches and stabilized the reactor and treated the injured crew with devices that looked like magic. Jake Morrison arrived from Neptune Station 3 days later on a fast courier ship. He had pushed the engines to their maximum to get here as quickly as possible. When he saw the damaged Vanguard floating in orbit with Zephian repair crews swarming over it, he felt his chest tighten. He had sent these people into danger. He had supported Ryan's decision to intervene. Now he had to face the consequences, whatever they might be. The first formal contact between humanity and the galactic species happened on the surface of the Varen colony world. The Varens had prepared a landing site near their capital city. Ryan and his senior officers took a shuttle down with Jake. Lily came too because she was the only one who really understood the translation systems. They wore their dress uniforms, which seemed inadequate for the occasion, but were the best they had. The Varans were unlike anything humans had imagined. They stood on 4 legs with crystalline exoskeletons that caught the light and broke it into rainbow colors. Their eyes were compound and faceted. Their voices came from somewhere inside their thoraxes and sounded like wind chimes. But when Ambassador Krell approached Ryan and extended one of his forward limbs in a gesture that was clearly meant to be a handshake, the meaning was obvious. They were people. Different, but people. Sierra Keen landed her shuttle nearby and approached with several of her officers. The Zephians were more familiar in shape, with 2 arms and 2 legs and a head with eyes and a mouth. But their feathers ruffled in patterns that Lily said indicated mood and intention. Sarah's feathers were raised in what looked like respect or possibly caution. She looked at Ryan and Jake with those sharp eyes and said they needed to talk about what happened here and what it meant for the future. They gathered in a Viren building that had survived the bombardment. The room was circular with walls made of something like glass that showed the city beyond. Much of it was in ruins. Rescue crews were still pulling survivors from collapsed structures. Syra said that the Korthax Dominion had been expanding for decades. They had destroyed 17 civilizations before the Varens. Other species had tried to stop them and failed. The Zephian Commonwealth had formed an alliance with the Varen Collective to contain Korthax expansion. But they were losing ground. Jake asked why the Korthax were so powerful. Syra explained that they had numbers and technology, and most importantly, they had absolute ruthlessness. They did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They conquered or they destroyed. Species that surrendered became slaves. Species that resisted became extinct. The galaxy had learned to fear them. Ryan said that humanity had fought species like that before. He said that Earth's history was full of empires that thought they were invincible. He said those empires always fell eventually. Syra looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been pity. She said the Korthax were not like anything humanity had faced before. She said they had thousands of ships and millions of soldiers. She said humanity had just made an enemy they could not possibly defeat. Lily spoke up for the first time. She said that maybe humanity could not defeat the Korthax alone, but the Varens could not defeat them alone either. Neither could the Zephians. She said that the battle they just won was won because 3 species worked together. She said that maybe the answer was not for humanity to fight the Korthax, but for everyone to fight them together. Krell made a sound like crystals rubbing together, which the translator said was agreement. He formally invited humanity to join the Varen Collective as allies. Sierra was more cautious. She said the Zephian Commonwealth needed to know more about humanity before making alliances. She said she would report what happened here to her government. She said the decision would be theirs. Jake knew this was bigger than him or Ryan or anyone on the Vanguard. This was a decision for Earth's government to make. He sent an encrypted message back to Earth Command containing everything they had learned. He included tactical data on the Korthax. He included cultural information about the Varans and Zephians. He included his own recommendation that humanity should join the galactic community and prepare for war. Then he waited for orders. The response came back within a day. Earth's government wanted formal negotiations. They wanted ambassadors and treaties and time to understand what they were getting into. But they also understood that time was something they might not have. War Commander Thrax had escaped. He would report to his emperor. The Korthax now knew about humanity, and they knew where Earth was located. The clock was ticking. 6 months passed, and Earth's orbit looked like nothing humanity had ever built before. Shipyards stretched for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Construction crews worked in shifts that never stopped. Welding torches lit up the darkness like stars. New vessels rolled out of the yards every week. Destroyers and cruisers and carriers all built with a combination of human engineering and alien technology that the Varens and Zephians had shared. Earth had done what it always did when faced with an existential threat. It industrialized warfare on a scale that made the alien species uncomfortable. Jake Morrison was not commander anymore. They had promoted him to admiral and given him command of Earth's First Fleet. He stood on the bridge of the new flagship Defiance and looked at the tactical displays showing 40 human warships ready for deployment. It was not enough. Intelligence reports said the Korthax Dominion had thousands of ships. But 40 was what they had, and 40 would have to do. Lily Patterson was not on a ship anymore. She ran the Xenocultural Exchange program from an office in Geneva. She had embassies on 3 alien worlds now, and a staff of 200 linguists and diplomats. She video called Jake once a week to update him on the political situation. The galactic community was divided about humanity. Some species admired their courage. Others feared their aggressive nature. The Korthax were using human history against them. Every war Earth had ever fought was being broadcast as evidence that humans were dangerous and unstable. Emma Rodriguez had moved to the orbital construction yards. She supervised the integration of alien shield technology with human ships. The Zephians had taught her things about energy fields that Earth scientists were still trying to understand. The Virans had shared their metallurgy techniques that made armor twice as strong. Emma worked 18-hour days and never complained. She knew what was coming. Ryan Hughes trained the new captains. He had a school now on Mars where Earth's best officers learned tactics he had developed fighting the Korthax. He taught them to fight dirty. He taught them to ignore the rules that other species followed. He taught them that survival mattered more than honor. His students called him the Wolf, and they followed his lessons like religious doctrine. Some of them would die in the coming war. Ryan knew that. He tried to prepare them. Anyway, the Galactic Summit was held on a neutral world called Axios Prime. It was a beautiful planet with crystal cities and gardens that floated in the air using technology nobody would explain. Representatives from every major species gathered in a great hall that could hold thousands. Jake went as Earth's military representative. Lily went as the diplomatic representative. They wore their uniforms and tried not to look as nervous as they felt. The Korthax sent an ambassador named Vex. He was smaller than War Commander Thrax, with smooth gray skin and eyes that never blinked. He spoke in a voice that was soft and reasonable. He showed images of human wars. He showed footage of nuclear weapons and bombed cities and mass graves. He said that humanity was a plague that would spread through the galaxy if allowed. He said the Korthax Dominion would be doing everyone a favor by eliminating Earth before humans could harm anyone else. The other species murmured among themselves. Some looked at Jake and Lily with suspicion. The Silicate Hierarchy representative said that humanity's violent history was concerning. The nomadic clans said they wanted no part of a war between humans and Korthax. Even some of the Viran delegates looked uncertain. Lily stood up. She was shaking, but her voice was steady. She said that Vex was right about human history. She said humanity had done terrible things. She said they had fought wars that killed millions and built weapons that could destroy worlds. She said all of that was true and humanity did not deny it. Then she said that humanity had also learned from those mistakes. She said they had built laws to prevent genocide. She said they had created organizations to protect peace. She said they had reached for the stars not to conquer but to explore. She said that humanity's violent past made them understand the cost of war better than any species that had never faced extinction. She said that was exactly why the galaxy needed them now. Ambassador Krell stood up and supported her. He said the Varan Collective owed their survival to human courage. He said humanity had risked everything to save strangers they had never met. Sierra Keen stood and said the Zephian Commonwealth recognized humanity's potential as allies. She said humans fought with a creativity and determination that could turn the tide against the Korthax. Vex smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. He said the debate was pointless because the Korthax Emperor had already made his decision. He transmitted a holographic message that filled the center of the hall. The Emperor was enormous and covered in armor that looked like it had been fused to his skin. His voice was like grinding metal. He said humanity had 1 month to surrender. They would provide half their population as slaves and submit to Korthax rule, or they would be destroyed. Every ship, every station, every colony, Earth itself would be bombed until nothing lived on its surface. The hall fell silent. Jake looked at Lily. She looked at him. They both knew what Earth's government had decided. They had voted 3 days ago. Jake stood and walked to the center of the hall. He looked up at the holographic Emperor and spoke clearly so everyone could hear. He said that humanity had been threatened before. He said they had faced extinction from ice ages and plagues in themselves. He said they were still here. He said that Earth did not kneel to anyone. He said the Korthax wanted a war and they would get one. But when it was over, the galaxy would know that humanity finished what others started. The Emperor's hologram disappeared. Vex looked at Jake with those unblinking eyes and said the Dominion would make an example of Earth. Then he left the hall. Many of the other delegates left too. But the Varans stayed. The Zephians stayed. A few others stayed as well. Species that were tired of being bullied. Species that saw in humanity a chance to fight back. The war came 2 weeks later. The Korthax Emperor sent 200 warships to Axios Prime. He wanted to destroy the summit and punish everyone who had sided with humanity. The defenders had 80 ships. 40 were human, 20 were Varan, 15 were Zephian, 5 belonged to smaller species who had decided to make a stand. Jake commanded the defense from the Defiance. Ryan was there too, commanding a destroyer squadron. Emma had made sure every human ship had the best shields and weapons they could build. Lily was on the planet below coordinating the evacuation of civilians. They all knew the odds were impossible. The Korthax fleet arrived in formation. Perfect lines of warships that blotted out the stars. The Emperor's flagship was in the center. War Commander Thrax commanded a battle group on the right flank. They began their attack with overwhelming force. Plasma fire lit up space. Ships died on both sides. The human vessels fought using every trick Ryan had taught them. They swarmed like insects. They used debris for cover. They targeted weak points. They made the Korthax pay for every meter of space. Emma had discovered something in her research. The Korthax command ships used a specific frequency to coordinate their fleet. It was encrypted, but she had been working on it for months. Now she broke the code. Ryan broadcast that frequency filled with random noise. Chaos spread through the Korthax formation. Ships lost coordination. Captains did not know which orders were real. The perfect formation fell apart. The Allied fleet pushed forward. Jake led them straight at the Emperor's flagship. It was a suicide run, but it was also the only chance they had. The Emperor's shields were the strongest in the Korthax fleet. They absorbed hit after hit without failing. Then Ryan appeared with his destroyer squadron. They had gone dark and circled around behind. They fired everything at the shield generators. The generators exploded. The shields fell. The Emperor's flagship took critical damage. War Commander Thrax broke formation to protect his Emperor. But he had to choose between saving his leader and winning the battle. For the first time in his career, Thrax chose retreat. He evacuated the Emperor and jumped to faster-than-light speed. The rest of the Korthax fleet saw their Emperor flee and their morale broke. They scattered and ran. The battle was over. Humanity had lost 15 ships. The Varans lost 8. The Zephians lost 5. But they had won. The Korthax Dominion had been defeated again. Their aura of invincibility was shattered. Species across the galaxy received the news and began to hope. The Korthax sued for peace within a month. They signed treaties establishing borders and agreeing to end their expansion. The war was not over completely, but the immediate threat had passed. Jake stood on Earth looking up at the stars 6 months after the battle. Lily was there, and Ryan and Emma. They were tired and scarred, and they had lost friends in the fighting. But Earth was safe. The Varan Collective was safe. The galaxy had changed because an alien distress call had reached the wrong species. Or maybe it had reached exactly the right species. A transmission came through on Jake's communicator. Another distress call from an unknown sector. Another species in trouble. Jake looked at his friends. Lily smiled. Ryan nodded. Emma checked her equipment. They had become something new in the galaxy. They were the ones who answered when others called for help. They were humanity, and they did not walk away from people in need. Jake sent word.